Good morning. As chairman of the bipartisan Congressional Steel Caucus, which includes 1/4 of the entire membership of the House of Representatives, it's my privilege to welcome our distinguished witnesses, members, and guests to the 2026 State of the Steel. Thank you for joining us here today. To begin, I recognize myself for 5 minutes to give an opening statement. As written in our statements, the purpose of the Steel Caucus exists to form a bipartisan coalition of members to advocate on behalf of the steel industry and steel workers to Congress and the executive branch as they, in their respective roles, create, direct, and implement legislation and policies that affect these constituencies. This is a mission we take seriously, and over the past several years, we've consistently led efforts supporting the most impactful policies that have unleashed the might of the American steel industry. As many testimonies will highlight, the implementation of Section 232 tariffs in 2018 by President Trump has done more good for the domestic steel industry than any other policy. The Steel Caucus has and always will fight for a strong Section 232 program. Then when trade cheaters found loopholes around Section 232, the Trump administration acted by clamping down on trade cheats using derivative products or transshipment to circumvent our laws. We are lucky to have a president so responsive to the needs of the steel industry. As a caucus, we do not just stop at Section 232. The Steel Caucus has acted on many fronts, and since the last State of the Steel event less than 6 months ago, we sent a letter to the Department of Commerce raising concerns about the persistent surge of unfairly traded imports of fabricated structural steel, weighed in on the International Trade Commission regarding rebar, anti-dumping, and countervailing duty investigation into several nations, alerted top administration officials of our strong opposition to any proposal that would allow access for Chinese automakers to enter the American market, and requested that U.S. Trade Representative and Commerce Department consider strong relief measures for the steel industry at the conclusion of the Section 301 investigation into structural excess capacity and production in manufacturing. Looking ahead into the second half of 2026, the review of USA will be extremely consequential. During this process, it's critical that the administration carefully considers how changes to the agreement will negatively or positively affect domestic steel. Thankfully, the administration time and time again has shown a strong commitment to putting America first, which gives me confidence that its talks with Canada and Mexico will proceed through that lens. Additionally, as Congress, we do not need to wait for the administration to act. We can act now on big issues facing the steel industry, especially Chinese transshipment, by finally passing the Leveling the Playing Field, the 2.0 Act. Despite all the work still left to be done, let's be clear, our nation is once again a great place for steel making. And that starts right here, right in my district. The 1st District of Arkansas is the largest steel producing district in the nation. And 2 bulwarks of our community, Nucor and U.S. Steel, are represented here today. In addition to them, other companies in my district investing in U.S. jobs and manufacturing steel products include Arkansas Steel, Hybar, Tenaris, Atlas Tube, and Parasource. Furthermore, my district is creating the educational infrastructure to maintain a steady steel workforce pipeline. Programs building the steel workforce in Northeast Arkansas include Arkansas State's Center for Advanced Materials and Steel Manufacturing, Arkansas Northeastern College's Steel and Industry Tech Program, and the Career Readiness Education and Skills Training Center operated by these institutions and Arkansas State University Newport. In conclusion, there are many reasons for optimism thanks to President Trump, the bipartisan work of the Steel Caucus, and the innovative organizations represented in front of us today. The great American industry, once in retreat and offshoring, is now expanding and investing. And as leading advocates for the domestic steel industry, we must continue our fight to protect the policies that have made this turnaround possible. I want to thank our witnesses again for being here today, and we're going to move straight to our witness testimony. Chairman Mervan will join us later, and we'll give him an opportunity to make an opening statement. As I said before, we have a number of individuals here representing various segments of the United States steel industry. Mr. Leon Topalin, Ms. Roxanne Brown, Mr. Patrick Bloom, Mr. Todd Young, Mr. Christopher Westbrooks, and Mr. Donnie Holder. I'm going to call on Mr. Leon Topalin first from Nucor to begin.
Good morning, Chairman Crawford, Vice Chairman Mervan, and members of the Steel Caucus. My name is Leon Topalin, and I'm the Chair and CEO of Nucor Corporation. And on behalf of our more than 33,000 teammates, thank you for the opportunity to speak today about the state of the American steel industry. Today, the American steel industry is performing very well. Resilient demand, effective trade policies, and world-class steelmaking capabilities are helping domestic producers compete at the highest levels. Our customers are busy, and our mills are responding by producing the new steels needed to fulfill demand. That means our teammates, your constituents, are on the job, earning strong paychecks and supporting their families. At Nucor, our pay-for-performance model ensures that when we succeed, that success is shared directly with our teammates. And over the last 5 years, we have returned nearly $3 billion back to our team members below the vice president level in the form of annual profit-sharing distributions. Just as importantly, the health, safety, and well-being of every one of our Nucor teammates and families is and will always remain our most important value. Nucor is now 7 consecutive record years in safety, and currently in 2026, we are on track to have the safest year in our company's history. In fact, through the first quarter of this year, 65 of Nucor's divisions have gone with 0 recordable injuries. Nucor remains committed to becoming the world's safest steel company. But steel is not just what we make, steel is who we are. It is the foundation of our nation's modern economy, our city skylines, bridges, vehicles, and energy infrastructure. As America invests in the future, steel is also the building block for the next generation of innovation, from semiconductor facilities, data centers, to advanced nuclear energy and fusion technologies. Since 2020, Nucor has invested more than $20 billion right here in the United States, not just to get bigger, but to get better. In that same period, we've added more than 10,000 new direct jobs and over 40,000 indirect jobs. We've added new capabilities, grown our footprint across the country, and entered new markets. We brought online a new rebar micro mill in North Carolina and expanded our bar mill in Kingman, Arizona with a new electric arc furnace. In Brandenburg, Kentucky, we've commissioned one of the most advanced steel plate mills in the world to produce the steel for America's modern warships and other critical applications. And lastly, we are finishing construction and beginning to ramp up operations at the largest investment in Nucor's history, our new sheet mill in Mason County, West Virginia. We've been able to make these investments because our elected officials have made real commitment to creating a level playing field through strong trade enforcement. Thank you. The Section 232 tariffs, along with anti-dumping and countervailing duties, have helped slow the flood of unfairly traded steel into the U.S. market. The impacts are real and they are measurable. Since the full reinstatement of 232 in 2025, import market share has dropped by more than 30%, or roughly 6.5 million tons, roughly matching the increase in America's domestic production over that same period. But the challenge is not going away. Global overcapacity, driven largely by China and their proxies, remains a serious challenge and ongoing threat. We have learned over decades of fighting this trade war that trading partners and America's adversaries will never stop looking for new ways to circumvent our trade laws and take full advantage of the strongest and most open market in the world. That is why we see the upcoming review of the USMCA agreement as a real opportunity to maximize demand for North American content while closing loopholes that operate to the detriment of the American industry. One important step would be requiring that all steel used in any steel or steel-intensive product be melted and poured in North America to qualify as USMCA compliant. North American steel purchasing requirements for automotive products should also be increased, with a melted and poured requirement effective immediately. And finally, a renewed agreement should require Canada and Mexico to take additional steps to prevent excess capacity from non-USMCA economies, particularly China, from entering North America's supply chains and undermining our industries and workers. Steel matters. American manufacturing matters. And as we mark 250 years of America's independence, it's worth remembering that the vision for economic strength through domestic manufacturing is as old as the Republic itself. Alexander Hamilton argued that the nation's true independence required not just political freedom, but the productive capacity of its own industry. That conviction remains as important today as it was during our nation's founding. With your continued partnership, Nucor and the entire American steel industry will continue to invest, create jobs, and strengthen the U.S. manufacturing for the next 250 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey, and appreciate that. Ms. Roxanne Brown, International President, United Steelworkers, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, Co-Chair, Chairman, and Van, and members of the Steel Caucus. My name is Roxanne Brown, and I'm International President of the United Steelworkers. the largest union in the North American steel sector. Our members mine, melt, and pour, and work in countless downstream steel-consuming industries. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. I'll focus my testimony on three key areas: the union's upcoming bargaining with major steel employers, the need to invest in our industries, and the ability of workers in the steel industry to organize. Basic steel industry bargaining will occur over the next few months between our major employers and the union. This is a process that has occurred for over 75 years, and we look forward to negotiating a fair contract for the 25,000 workers at major steel makers like U.S. Steel and Cleveland-Cliffs, where those agreements are set to expire September 1st of this year. When we bargain a contract, we don't just negotiate wages, hours, and benefits. We know that our facilities need investment too. Steel facilities are capital intensive and need continuous improvement to maintain their competitiveness. This investment should not come at reduced benefits for the workers who make the steel that generate dramatic value in the American economy. Our labor agreements help push investment at our locations, but the Steel Caucus can help too. We need to set policies that create certainty for the domestic steel industry so they don't just maintain but expand markets. My written testimony will provide a series of bills the union supports that will help push demand and encourage domestic investment in global sales. We also need to identify market segments for a bit of federal support to reduce our import reliance and create additional market competition. As an example, the Department of Commerce should be able to support steel firms as they work on qualifying new products for domestic markets. Meanwhile, our union continues to lead on rebuilding major steel-consuming industries. This is not just defending the auto industry, but you've also previously heard about the significant lost capacity and jobs in the domestic shipbuilding industry. The U.S. produces less than 6 commercial ocean-going vessels a year, while the People's Republic of China delivers nearly 60% of annual ocean-going vessels globally. The Steel Caucus should do everything it can to encourage the passage of the Ships for America Act, which would aid in revitalizing domestic shipbuilding. Investment also means defending our facilities. Our union continues to support the 232 on steel, improving our trade enforcement laws, and improving our trade agreements like USMCA. We need to better account for indirect steel trade too. Last year, the United States imported $25 billion of direct steel imports, but imported another $1.4 trillion worth of steel derivatives. Finally, our union is growing in the steel sector. Earlier this year, you heard from District 7 Director Michael Millsap about the JSW workers who voted to organize with USW at Mango Junction. Just a couple of weeks ago, workers were forced through another vote to maintain their union as the company delayed bargaining for a year. We won that vote again, but it highlights a broader issue. A multinational steel producer based in India with $21 billion in annual revenue continues to slow walk the bargaining process for American workers. That's why our union is in support of the private sector labor law reform, including the Faster Labor Contracts Act and the PRO Act. Our union knows steel, and I can turn to my left and my right, and we've worked with a lot of these companies for decades to defend global excess capacity as we go foreign subsidies and other trade-related matters. We should also stand together with the right of workers to organize. I want to thank the 10 Steel Caucus Republicans, along with nearly every Steel Caucus Democrat who voted in support of that bill, the Faster Labor Contracts Act. On a personal note, our union has been testifying before this caucus since the days of John Murtha and Ralph Regula and George Becker and Leo Gerard. And we really appreciate you putting these hearings back on a regular schedule. It means a lot to us, and it says a lot about your commitment, not just to the domestic industry, but to the associated jobs. Thank you, and I look forward to questions.
Thank you. Mr. Patrick Bloom, Executive Vice President of Government Relations, Cleveland-Cliffs, American Iron and Steel Institute. You are recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Crawford, members of the Steel Caucus. I'm Patrick Bloom. I serve as the Executive Vice President of Government Relations for Cleveland-Cliffs. I've been with the company since 2008, and I was part of Cleveland-Cliffs' transformation from an iron ore mining company to the largest producer of flat-rolled steel in the United States. Cleveland-Cliffs employs 25,000 workers, including 12,000 members of the United Steelworkers, as well as several thousand members of both the UAW and the IAM. Cleveland-Cliffs Chairman, President, and CEO Lorenzo Gonsalves asked that I convey to you all a very straightforward message. That message is as follows. The Section 232 national security tariff policies of the U.S. government, championed by President Trump's administration, are working exactly as intended. The implementation of 50% across-the-board steel Section 232 tariffs without exclusions or country-specific exemptions, as well as the addition of Section 232 tariffs on steel derivative products, have delivered relief from global steel overcapacity penetrating the U.S. market in the form of dumped steel and imports of steel-intensive goods. This relief was badly needed, and frankly, it was just in time. The steel Section 232 tariffs were first implemented in 2018, as you all know. At that time, U.S. apparent steel consumption was 116 million short tons. By 2024, that consumption figure had shrunk to approximately 102 million short tons. That's an alarming loss of 12% of steel consumption in the U.S. economy in just 6 years. At the same time, imports took up nearly 25% of the market in 2024. Shrinking steel consumption and year-on-year increases in steel imports was not a recipe for success of the American steel industry. Beginning in early 2025, President Trump took steps to strengthen the steel Section 232 tariff program, and there is tangible evidence that tariffs are working to strengthen the steel sector and safeguard U.S. national and economic security. U.S. steel industry capacity utilization is now over 80%. An 80% capacity utilization figure is considered an important benchmark for our sector that signals stability and profitability. Steel imports have been reduced significantly from elevated 2024 levels and now account for 15% of domestic consumption. A strong steel industry is supporting a resurgent U.S. manufacturing sector. The U.S. Federal Reserve has recorded manufacturing output turning decisively upward in 2025 and in 2026. In May 26, U.S. manufacturing achieved its strongest growth rate in the past 4 years. Other countries are taking note of our steel Section 232 actions, and at the urging of U.S. Trade Representative Ambassador Jameson Greer, are taking prudent steps to protect their own home markets from global steel overcapacity. This is a major producer of steel for the automotive sector. Imports of cars and light trucks are down a remarkable 25% in 2026 year-to-date as compared to last year. And auto companies are now investing in domestic production and growing their consumption of American-made steel. Cleveland-Cliffs has responded to these significant improvements in market conditions by bringing back previously underutilized production lines, including a steel shop at Cleveland Works, an electro-galvanizing line at New Carlisle Works in Indiana, and we are adding jobs and increasing production at 2 iron ore mines on Minnesota's Mesabi Iron Range. We are also preparing for a transformational investment in a blast furnace rebuild and a new state-of-the-art cogeneration plant at Middletown Works in Ohio, our flagship mill for the production of advanced automotive steels. In Butler, Pennsylvania, we are investing more than $170 million in Butler Works with support by the U.S. Department of Energy to expand production of grain-oriented electrical steel for transformers. In summary, the resurgence of U.S. manufacturing is well underway, and it will be supported by a strong and modern American steel industry. We ask that members of this caucus continue to vocally support a robust and durable steel Section 232 and steel derivative tariff program. Please speak out against those in Congress who advocate for tariff exclusions, country exemptions, and carve-outs from these critically important national security tariffs. We count on your continued support. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today.
Thank you, Mr. Bloom. Mr. Todd Young, Vice President of Government Affairs, U.S. Steel, you are recognized for 5 minutes.
Chairman Crawford and members of the Steel Caucus, thank you for convening today's hearing. On behalf of United States Steel and our President and CEO, Dave Burritt, we appreciate the caucus's bipartisan leadership on behalf of American-made steel. The state of American steel is both strong and strengthening. Demand is solid, reindustrialization is underway, trade enforcement is robust, And at U.S. Steel, we are taking action with investments that will build a bigger and better future. In Pennsylvania's Mon Valley, we're advancing major upgrades, including a new hot strip mill and slag recycling project. Investments of up to $2.5 billion that secure thousands of family-sustaining jobs in communities that have powered American industry for generations. In Arkansas, U.S. Steel's Big River operations continue to grow. In April, U.S. Steel announced a $1.9 billion investment to build a new direct reduced iron, or DRI, facility, the first of its kind in the United States. This new facility will leverage U.S. Steel's 2022 investment into direct reduced grade pellet capabilities in our Keetac Iron Ore facility in Minnesota. Minnesota's iron ore is at the heart of all of our steelmaking operations, both integrated and EAF. Future improvements to U.S. Steel's iron range facilities will further strengthen these vital operations. In Northwest Indiana, work is already underway. One of the world's tallest cranes is on site in Gary, supporting the execution of a $350 million reline of U.S. Steel's largest blast furnace. An additional roughly $200 million in projects at the hot strip mill and the steel shop are advancing. And in April, U.S. Steel announced plans to restart the Gary tin mill facility. This planned restart is expected to occur in early 2027, create 225 jobs, and provide customers greater access to American-made tin mill products. In Illinois, at Granite City, the restart of blast furnace B was successfully achieved at the end of March. The decision to restart the furnace was announced in December of last year, a decision driven by customer demand. As part of the restart, approximately 400 men and women have been hired to support furnace operations. In Alabama, at our Fairfield tubular operations, we announced a $75 million investment in November to install a new premium thread line. And this morning, U.S. Steel is issuing a press release announcing a new investment of approximately $475 million in a state-of-the-art quench and tempering line. U.S. Steel is making critical investments at Fairfield to bolster America's energy infrastructure. These investments all share one purpose: keeping American steel strong, competitive, and made at home. To achieve these investments in a timely manner, we're working proactively with environmental agencies at every level. We welcome strong standards and we share the commitment to responsible steelmaking. Yet we also know this: when permitting moves efficiently, America moves efficiently. In a global steel market with over 600 million tons of overcapacity, trade policy is of paramount importance. As U.S. Steel's president and CEO stated to this Congressional Steel Caucus in January, fair trade enforcement is absolutely essential. When American steelworkers compete on a level playing field, they win. When foreign producers dump subsidized steel into our markets, American workers pay the price. Tariffs work. They must remain strong, including tariffs on steel-intensive goods. They protect jobs, preserve domestic capacity, and support the investments U.S. Steel is making for customers across automotive, energy, construction, and manufacturing. To the Steel Caucus, thank you again for your bipartisan leadership. Congress after Congress, this caucus is an active, persuasive voice. With your leadership, American steel will stay strong for generations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Young. Mr. Christopher Westbrook, President and COO, Metallus Steel Manufacturers Association. You are recognized for 5 minutes.
Good morning, Chairman Crawford, Vice Chairman Mervan, and distinguished members of the Congressional Steel Caucus. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Chris Westbrooks, the President and Chief Operating Officer of Metallus, an Ohio-based specialty metals company. I also have the privilege of speaking on behalf of the Steel Manufacturers Association, who represents the electric arc furnace steel industry responsible for more than 70% of American steel production. Thanks to strong government actions, including strengthening Section 232 tariffs, right-sizing regulations, and passing significant tax reforms, the American steel industry has grown stronger. However, significant challenges remain. China continues to dump excess steel into global markets. Permitting delays slow critical projects. Electricity costs are rising with demand outpacing new capacity, and workforce shortages continue to constrain manufacturing growth. With the right policies, the coming year presents a tremendous opportunity to further strengthen both the steel industry and American manufacturing. Regarding tariffs, Section 232 steel tariffs have strengthened America's economic and national security by creating the conditions necessary for domestic steelmakers to invest, grow, and compete. In response, the industry has invested more than $25 billion in new and upgraded facilities and supported thousands of good-paying American jobs. Since the beginning of 2025, American steel production has increased by nearly 5 million tons, with another 4 million tons of annual capacity expected to come online over the next 2 years, enough steel to build more than 9 million automobiles. No single policy has done more to strengthen the American steel industry than enforceable steel tariffs. Additionally, the Working Families Tax Cuts are strengthening American manufacturing while providing relief to workers and their families. They're also helping manufacturers invest and grow, including Metallus, who spent approximately $110 million on new assets in 2025 and is targeting another $70 million in capital investments in 2026. Immediate expensing allows manufacturers to deduct the full cost of qualifying equipment purchases, making critical investments more affordable and helping new projects move forward. In terms of the North American trade environment, a renewed United States-Mexico-Canada agreement has the potential to significantly increase steel demand across the region. However, Canada and Mexico have not matched the United States' commitment to addressing global steel market distortions. Manufacturers of steel-intensive goods in both countries continue to rely heavily on steel sourced from non-market economies, especially China. To strengthen the agreement, we have urged the administration to require all steel and steel-intensive products to be melted and poured in North America, to strengthen automotive rules of origin, and to require Canada and Mexico to adopt steel import enforcement measures comparable to those of the United States. These reforms would strengthen regional manufacturing and steel demand. Congress and the administration should also reject any effort to weaken or negotiate away Section 232 steel tariffs currently applied to Canada and Mexico. Rebuilding America's manufacturing base requires more than strong trade enforcement. Recruiting, training, and retaining workers remains one of the most pressing challenges facing steel communities nationwide. Steel producers are partnering with trade schools to develop talent pipelines, but additional action is needed. America's manufacturing strength depends on a skilled industrial workforce. The Steel Caucus has a strong bipartisan history of advancing policies that strengthen America's steel industry. Congress can build on that record by advancing 3 priorities. First, pass the Level the Playing Field 2.0 Act to provide modern tools for combating unfair trade practices and addressing the evolving threats posed by China's industrial policies. Second, continue making robust investments in America's infrastructure and defense industries. Infrastructure and defense programs drive demand for American-made steel, create jobs, strengthen communities, and ensure our national security. Finally, enact bipartisan permitting reform. America's outdated permitting system is slowing economic growth, increasing costs, and undermining competition. Thank you for holding this important hearing for the Steel Caucus's steadfast commitment to America's steelworkers and manufacturers. We look forward to continuing our partnership with the Steel Caucus to advance these priorities and build on America's manufacturing resurgence.
Thank you, Mr. Westbrooks. And finally, Mr. Donnie Holder, Chairman, Committee on Pipe and Tube Imports, and Vice President of WEPCO, VP Strategic Sourcing and Global Affairs. Mr. Holder, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Crawford, Vice Chairman Burvan, and distinguished members of the Congressional Steel Caucus. Thank you for the opportunity to testify before you this morning. My name is Donnie Holder. I am the Vice President of Strategic Sourcing and Global Trade Affairs at WEPCO Industries, headquartered in Sand Springs, Oklahoma. WEPCO is a leading producer of carbon, alloy, stainless steel tubular products, as well as tubular products made from specialty metals. We have over 1,400 employees at 13 facilities across the country in Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Illinois, and Texas, who are all graduates of our in-house training center known as WEPCO University. Today, I appear as chairman of the Committee on Pipe and Tube Imports, CPTI, the nation's leading trade association for the U.S. pipe and tube industry. CPTI's 42 members employ over 40,000 workers, making an array of carbon and stainless steel pipe and tube and steel products in 32 states and 105 congressional districts. CPTI has been a consistent voice for strong trade laws that ensure the industry workers have a level playing field to compete in. We support the AD/CVD laws, Section 232 and Section 301, and all tools that are essential to the industry's continued growth. Unfortunately, despite Section 232 relief, imports of steel pipe and tube products increased by over 300,000 tons in 2025, and in 2026 continue to capture more than a third of the U.S. market. We applaud the President for announcing strengthening provisions to Steel Section 232 on April 2nd to clarify that 50% tariffs will apply to the full customs value of the imported article. Further revisions should apply to derivative products to stem erosion of our downstream customer base. This is important to avoid further import shifting, which has resulted in a weakened 232 remitting. CPTI supports Section 301 investigation, the Act's policy and practices of certain economies relating to structural excess capacity and production in manufacturing sectors in 16 countries. In our testimony at the May 7, 2026 USTR hearing, we emphasized the importance of stacking any 301 relief onto existing steel Section 232 relief. We support the renewal of USMCA. It is imperative to include strong rules of origin import monitoring and mechanisms to address massive overcapacity filled by China, India, and other countries show the priority in negotiations. In fact, citing the importance of USMCA, our company has shared with the administration Fortress North America, a novel proposal to use Section 232 authority to enforce U.S. unfair trade orders that are being circumvented through Canada, Mexico, and other third countries. Our industry has used anti-dumping and countervailing duty laws to challenge unfair trade practices, including over 200 in the past 3 decades. This includes new petitions filed on April 2nd of this year on imports of energy tubular products from Austria, Taiwan, and UAE. As Congress continues to work this year, we will focus on legislation that will ensure a level playing field, ensure customs enforcement trade laws to end persistent fraud, and support pro-manufacturing policies. These include passage of the Level the Playing Field Act 2.0. This bill will strengthen existing trade laws, and we ask caucus to engage with colleagues of the House Committee on Ways and Means to advance the legislation. The Steel Act of 2025 strengthens the Enforce and Protect Act by closing loopholes in the statute, the Fighting Trade Cheats Act, and the Protecting American Industry and Labor from International Trade Crimes Act. These bills seek to end circumvention and criminal acts by bad actors and trade cheats and directs the Department of Justice to focus on trade-related crimes, including transshipment and undervaluation and honest fraud enforcement. The Manifest Modernization Act, which expands reporting of manifest data beyond shipbound data to aviation, rail, and truck engines. CPTI supports Buy American programs to ensure U.S.-made steel products are produced for federal infrastructure projects. This includes the Build America 250 Act. We thank the caucus for their work to ensure the nation's steel sector can continue to contribute to the nation's economic growth and security, and look forward to collaborating with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for our panel's opening statements. We appreciate that. Before we move to member questions, I want to recognize the distinguished vice chair, the gentleman from Indiana, Mr. Frank Mervan, for an opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, and thank you to all the witnesses for traveling here today. I would especially like to welcome Roxanne Brown, who's testifying in front of the caucus for the first time in her new capacity as the International President of the USW. And of course, thank you to my friend Chairman Crawford for his continued leadership in advocating for the American steel industry and its workforce. Every year, this hearing yields important discussion about how Congress can engage to address the ongoing challenges of the domestic steel industry. And there's no better time than having this conversation than right now in anticipation of the recognition of major labor contracts, new investments in the facilities across the country, the reauthorization of the federal surface transportation dollars, and the pending review of the USMCA. Preserving the strength of the American steel manufacturing is deeply personal for me and my community I represent. As I mentioned in the front of this caucus for many times before, my grandfather came from Czechoslovakia and a steel worker who spent 53 years in the mills in East Chicago. In Northwest Indiana, the steel industry is the economic engine that supports our entire region, and the people depend on these jobs to support their families, secure their retirements, and maintain their health care. The hardworking men and women at the heart of this industry deserve fair wages, safe working conditions, and continued investment in the long-term health and legacy facilities that help build this country. In Northwest Indiana, the steel industry directly employs about 13,000 workers, many of whom will be bargaining new contracts in the coming months. As the witnesses in front of me look forward to those negotiations, it is vital that they find a solution that rewards American workers and maintains the health and strength of our industry. It is particularly important that we continue to invest in the long-term future of the facilities supported and ran by the organized labor. Northwest Indiana has long been the top steel producing region in the nation, and the state as a whole is responsible for more than a quarter of the nation's total steel input. Investments like the realigning of the blast furnace at Gary Works and the reopening of the Gary Tin Mill are important investments to drive job growth in short term. But we also need to ensure that the communities that build America continue to be the central to the future of the steelmaking. That means finding ways to keep legacy facilities economically competitive in the long term and working toward more sustainable steel production across the board. The Steel Caucus also remains focused on curbing global access capacity and protecting American steel producers against unfair trade practices. Over the last month, Mr. Crawford and I have weighed in on the threat of Chinese autos to American steelmakers and oppose any proposal lowering barriers to access for Chinese automakers into the American markets. We are also closely monitoring the Section 301 investigation on excess capacity and have encouraged the administration to selectively stack remedies from this investigation on top of existing 232 tariffs. As North American trade partners meet in the coming weeks to discuss the renegotiation of the USMCA, the Steel Caucus will also be engaged with the administration to strengthen and expand melted poured standards to prevent steel from non-North American markets from being dumped on our shores. From the mines to the mills to the downstream producers, the steel industry is a driver of our nation's economy, energy and security, and national defense. I look forward to today's discussion to learn more about how we can be advocates for the continued health and strength of the American steelworkers and its workforce. Thank you again, and I yield back.
I thank the gentleman, and also just on a personal note, I want to thank you for your steadfast partnership and your commitment and your passion for this industry. It's very clear in the way that you advocate for this industry so well. I appreciate that very much. We're now going to move to member questions. Due to time constraints, each member will have 4 minutes to ask questions, which I'll have to enforce fairly strictly because we want to get as many members in the queue as we can. So I'll start with myself. I want to direct my first question to Mr. Topalian. As you know, Nucor is the largest steel producer in North America, and it's been a large part of the Northeast Arkansas community for decades now. Can you address the long-term investment Nucor's made in Northeast Arkansas and what's it's accomplished in Mississippi County and how that benefits our entire country?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate it, and as you well know, the Northeast Arkansas community holds a very special place in my heart. My wife's in children's heart. We raised our girls there and lived in that community. Had the opportunity to serve as the vice president of Nucor Yamato Steel, or joint venture between Nucor and Yamato Kogyo. That corridor is home to about 2,000 Nucor team members and their families and their jobs. That area of the country, as you mentioned in your opening statement, is the largest steel producing county in the entire nation. But the footprint of Nucor Yamato Steel is very different from many other mills that serve a regional focus. That mill is the largest structural mill in the Western Hemisphere. It serves the market across the entire United States and into Canada and Mexico. And so it is a critical piece of our long-term future. And again, something that, for me, having served there, having spent time there, having worked with our team there, it is an incredible community, committed, hardworking, and they have been incredible contributors to our customers, shareholders, and ultimately a shining example of what the Nucor culture looks, feels, and acts like every day.
Appreciate that. Mr. Young, I mentioned this to Mr. Burritt in the last State of the Steel, but I want to reiterate how excited I am about the grain-oriented steel mill, electrical steel mill that's proposed or that's going to be built outside Big River 2 in my district. Can you give us an update on the status of the project and talk about how this new mill will bolster American energy security?
Thank you, Congressman. You did speak with our CEO back in January about this. We're also happy to keep you apprised at any time. As I mentioned, we have formally announced the $1.9 billion DRI investment at Big River, and that is underway. We also, as a reminder, have a non-grain oriented electrical steel line that serves motors that is open and operating there. And GOES, or grain oriented electrical steel for transformers, is absolutely on our radar. We have many projects underway. There's a sequence to which ones we can start, which ones are in planning and engineering. This one is of significant interest, but it is challenging. It is producing the highest grades does require great technical expertise. It's also significant investment for a low volume. And while we don't have a specific timeline or information for you right now, Our interest in this and our focus on this continues, and I would say with confidence, we will be among the first to know when that is ready for an announcement of any kind.
Thank you. In the interest of time, I'm going to turn back my last 52 seconds and recognize my Vice Chairman for 4 minutes, Mr. Mervan.
Ms. Brown, you talked in your testimony about the upcoming contract negotiations for 25,000 workers at the major steel makers like U.S. Steel and Cleveland-Cliffs. Can you provide some detailed information about where those negotiations stand and the importance of reaching an agreement that rewards American workers?
Thank you so much, Mr. Vice Chairman, and again, thank you both and all of you for your commitment to this industry and the workers in this industry. Yes, we have pretty significant steel bargaining that will be beginning in the next few weeks. Our steel contracts end at September 1st, and so we will get to the table about the middle of July. And for us, the priorities are really clear. Mr. Young talked about the investments that are happening across a lot of the U.S. steel facilities. We're excited about those investments. There are about $11 billion of investments that will be spread across several U.S. steel facilities. And we want to make sure that those actually happen and that they land, especially at our legacy facilities where we represent the bulk of our members. And so that's something that we're pushing very heavily in bargaining. Obviously, wages and benefits are very important to us. As several members have already said it, this industry is the backbone of not just this country, but the communities that these facilities are in, and they are economic drivers. And so when our members bargain strong contracts, it doesn't only benefit them, it breathes out into the community. So we're very much looking forward to bargaining good, strong contracts that work for both the union and the industry.
Thank you. Mr. Young, economic development is probably one of the most competitive things in our country. And I guess I want to get to, I applaud the investments that you're making in your works, but the question that I have, and applaud the investments that you're making throughout the country in the steel industry. What does the long-term future of these integrated mills in Northwest Indiana look like? Do you intend to provide the same level of investment that we've recently seen in other facilities in the South to ensure that the next century of steel is forged in the communities that made U.S. Steel what it is today?
Thank you, Congressman. I can state unequivocally, blast furnaces are critical to our country. We have 4 that operate in Northwest Indiana, the largest of which is the focus of the $350 million pre-line project that is actively underway right now. We have folks working every day of the week through holidays to complete that project. That investment extends the life of that blast furnace for several decades. This is a critical component of our future. It's critically important to our country. I know at times there are folks who question the necessity of blast furnaces. One thing that we've seen in the past several administrations, regardless of party, is an emphasis on that we've got to keep these operating. We need both blast furnaces and electric arc furnaces to meet the needs of the country. So these commitments are real, and I would say this project that's underway right now is a demonstration and a commitment to operations in Gary and our other locations.
Thank you. With that, I yield back.
Thank the gentleman, Mr. Davidson.
Thank you, Chairman. Our witnesses, thank you so much for your work and just confidence and investment in the United States of America and our workforce, and just innovation. The technology that's out there is really encouraging. This administration has certainly continued what the previous Trump administration did, just emphasizing the importance of steel as a component of national security and the importance to our nation as a whole. In the previous administration, we had pretty early on a path to exclusions. People carried the day and saying, well, as a former owner of metal stamping companies and consumer of steel or processor of it, as I passed it through to end customers, you get in a tough spot where you might not have a domestic option for a certain grade of steel. What's the argument for exclusions? I have people on both sides of this issue in my district. So for their benefit, could you maybe Patrick explain it?
Yeah, certainly, Congressman, and thank you for the question. I guess the fundamental objection that we have to exclusions is that they tend to be abused. And, over the roughly 6 or 7 years that the Section 232 exclusion process was in place, we saw rampant abuse of the exclusion process. We saw companies applying for exclusions well exceeding the volume of any legitimate demand, and doing so as a hedge against negotiations with domestic steel producers. And I would also say that the abuse of the Section 232 exclusion program really weakened the effectiveness of the Section 232 measures, which is exactly why, upon returning to office, President Trump decided to eliminate the exclusion process, eliminate country-specific exceptions, and really reinforce the effectiveness of the Section 232 measures, and ultimately increase those tariffs to 50%.
Yeah, thank you for highlighting that, and that answers one of the common questions I get. Another one I just want to emphasize is Cliffs has made announcements about mining investments, and certainly a big investment there in Middletown, Ohio. You look at the rest of the supply chain, and I think about clean, beautiful coal. Could you emphasize why, for steel makers, it's important to have a strong coal sector in the United States?
Yeah, of course. Blast furnaces are fueled by coal. Coal in the form of metallurgical coal that is refined into coke. And I can provide a very concrete example. In Middletown, the operation of our blast furnace, which is one of the most efficient blast furnaces anywhere in the world, is supported by a coke plant that's just across the street that employs more than 150 individuals. And as Todd emphasized and really spoke to directly, we need both blast furnaces and electric arc furnaces in this country, and we're going to continue to need both blast furnaces and electric arc furnaces going forward, which means that we're going to need a reliable supply of metallurgical coal and coke to fuel those blast furnaces. And our industry, including the integrated industry, blast furnaces will continue to get cleaner and cleaner, but we will also continue to operate blast furnaces and continue to rely on coal.
Yeah, thanks for that. Thanks for the investment to keep Middletown strong. Thanks for Mr. Westbush for your investment there in Ohio and the broader sector. It's an honor to be working towards making America greater than ever before with strong trade policy, particularly for steel. And yield back.
Thank you, gentlemen. Ms. Butson.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Vice Chairman, for holding this hearing, and thank you to all of the witnesses for being here. This past March, steelworkers at Granite City Works led a successful push to restart their blast furnace more than 2 years after U.S. Steel made the decision to idle the facility's iron-making operations. More than 400 workers are back on the job in a steelmaking town that's been anchored by Granite City Works for more than 100 years. Under the Nippon deal, a number of U.S. Steel facilities across the country received protections until 2035. Unfortunately, Granite City's protections expire in June of 2027. And as a reminder, and I know Mr. Young is aware of this, this is the only facility that did not get this extra protection. My first question to Mr. Young, can you provide an update on how operations are going at Granite City Works now that the blast furnace is fired again?
Thank you, Congresswoman. As I stated, the announcement to restart the blast furnace was made in December. That is a very significant process. There was hiring involved. It also needed to be done very safely. That was successfully accomplished. It's a credit to the workers there. And began in March, so steel is again being melted and made in Granite City. As that was driven by customer demand, it can say that it is performing very well right now. The market's supporting its operations. It was a positive decision, and I would say the entire enterprise there is performing well. You mentioned about certainty of commitments. Those were tied to the state of operations at that time. So it's a factor of that the blast furnace was not operating at the time of that commitment. But I know you spoke with our CEO about how, what the future is for Granite City, and he said that it's his hope that it could remain open forever, was his phrase.
I hope so too.
Yes, and what he was speaking to is that, as you've mentioned, it is cyclical, and in a cyclical industry, Granite City often feels that the most of our facilities, but we very much want it to be successful. It is right now, and you've had a significant interest in this since you've come to Congress, and we are committed to keeping you informed early and often with developments as it relates to Granite City's mill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Young. And I just want to make the point, as U.S. Steel continues to consider the $4 billion greenfield investment in the United States buying the pond, I would encourage you to consider Illinois as a place for that investment, specifically Granite City's existing infrastructure and workforce and community, where those kind of investment decisions would be very welcomed and I believe put to really good use. With the limited time I have left, could I actually ask President Brown a question? Just we talked a little bit about the good news of this blast furnace coming back on in Granite City. Could you talk a little bit about, from the steelworker perspective, what that's meant for those families in that community?
Thank you for the question, Congresswoman. And I think, you know that so well, actually, probably better than most here, because you have been so intimately involved in that whole process, and you stay so close to our members on the ground. It's meant everything. It was devastating when it was taken down. And so this has been an infusion of life and beyond that hope for our members. And like you have, I also have had a conversation with Mr. Berg about keeping this going for the long term, as Todd just laid out. I mean, he's conveyed to me that that's his hope as well. But this is everything for that community, and so our union is committed to working with U.S. Steel and also the Congress to make sure that this can stay for the long term.
Thank you, Ms. Miller.
Thank you, Chairman Crawford and Vice Chairman Ryan, for having this wonderful meeting this morning. And I want to thank my witness, Mr. Topalian, for taking the time to being here to discuss the state of steel. Mr. Topalian, in your testimony, you highlighted the several ways Nucor is supporting its teammates and providing quality paychecks to help support hardworking families. Could you expand on the programs and initiatives that you have in place to support your workforce, particularly as it continues to grow in my district at Nucor Steel, West Virginia?
Well, thank you for the question, Congresswoman. And look, there's a lot. I'm a benefactor of a man who had a vision in Ken Iverson to build a company that treated its workers and took care of its team members in ways that I'd never dreamed of when I started 30 years ago. So, it begins with the value of safety that expands well beyond the making of our products into the mental health side and how we engage our team members. And the suicide rate among manufacturing is 3 times the national average in the U.S. And so how we care for our team beyond just the team members. So we offer, services to the spouses, partners, children, extended family members, to really think about how we do that. We return 10% of our pre-tax profits every year back to the team members below the VP level. 2 years ago, I got to sign a $1 billion check back to 30,000 team members. Every team member got $50,000 for their profit sharing and retirements based on the profits that we make. And when you treat people and give them the tools to do their job, and you treat them well, and they know that you care as much about them and their well-being and their families as you do your own, incredible things happen. And that has been the history in the incredible journey of Nucor, of a little company that nobody thought much of 50 years ago, and now look where we're at. And for us, it's not about being the biggest, it's about being the most capable in providing our customers and shareholders with the best returns. So in your district, for example, 2 years ago, we made the decision to invest $100 million in that community that's going to last for decades and generations to come, so that the kids in Kingman, Arizona that are sitting in 4th grade right now that have absolutely no idea they're going to work for an incredible steel company one day and potentially be sitting where I'm sitting. When I joined Nucor in 1996, I was a young engineer that knew nothing. I came out of nuclear power and I had no idea what steelmaking was. And here I sit with the gratitude to serve our 33,000 team members, that are men and women who make up this incredible family. So I would tell you our entire focus of how we serve our team is to reward them. And when you do that, you get the incredible results and the history and the legacy that Nucor has been built on.
Even to borrow the statement from President Brown about the infusion of life, you all invested over $1 million in the school system before you ever broke ground, which meant so much in this small community on the Ohio River. And every time I drive up Route 2 and see the huge facility, which is almost finished, I just get so excited. At Nucor Steel in West Virginia, we have seen firsthand how lengthy and unpredictable the permitting process can delay critical investments. Given that there is bipartisan momentum behind permitting reform, but limited time left on the legislative calendar, how important is it that Congress act this year to deliver meaningful permitting reform?
Real quick answer, sir.
Sorry.
Yeah, incredibly important. You know, Nucor's permit in West Virginia sat idle for a year. We literally lost hundreds of millions of dollars waiting to get those permits in hand. And so, again, we're going to be great stewards of that community, but reform is got to happen. It's too slow, and it's great companies that want to do this. We're not circumventing anything. We are the cleanest, safest, most productive steel company in the world, and we don't want to bypass any regulations. We want to do great things in that community. It's just got to be done faster.
Thank you so much. I yield back my time.
Thank you, Mr. Manning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to Vice Chair Mervan. Thank you to our witnesses for being here today. I'm going to try to get as many questions in as possible, starting with Mr. Topalian. Nucor operates a steel mill, as we both know, in Auburn, New York. For 50 years, that mill has been an important part of the community that I'm proud to represent. And it's a true Central New York success story. So I want to thank you for Nucor's commitment to creating great paying jobs, American jobs, and your commitment to doing everything you can to make sure that work continues there. You talked about the $20 billion of investment that's been made, and you had an opportunity to talk about some of the other facilities, but what type of investment have we seen recently at Nucor and moving forward? And I've been proud to visit that great facility.
Yeah, we've seen a ton, and again, the largest investment in the history of our company is happening in Apple Grove, West Virginia, $4 billion investment to bring 800 direct jobs and thousands of indirect jobs. We've put $100 million into Cayman, Arizona. We've put $280 million in Charleston, South Carolina for a new galvanizing line. We've built the Lexington new micro mill in Lexington, North Carolina at $350 million. We're built a paint and galvanizing line in Crawfordsville, Indiana for another couple $100 million. We've bought 5 or 6 M&A projects, so the garage doors, the Rytec overspeed, high-speed doors companies. We've bought infrastructure companies, data center, racking companies. So again, we've spent about $14 billion in our direct steelmaking operations and about $6 billion in M&A to bring companies to expand our offering. And so today, Nucor offers about 92% of the steel required for a data center in the U.S., so the hyperscalers, from everything from the rebar that goes into the ground to the infrastructure within that data center. So again, we're investing to create capabilities of where the puck's going to be in the next 5, 8, 10, 15 years for our customers.
Yes, thank you. I look forward to being back out in Auburn soon. Auburn, as you know, has an electric arc furnace mill there. Very high energy consumption. Can you speak to what Congress can do to try to alleviate some of those high electrical costs?
Look, the EAF sector is a high energy demand, but again, when I think about our nation's greatest risks, to me, it's a superpower in the world. We have got to be energy independent. Right now in China, 46 brand new nuclear power plants are being built, 46. Today, the U.S. is building 0. We've got to do more. Solar and wind is fine, and that's going to be great, but it is simply not enough. We've got to re-embrace nuclear power, not just for manufacturing, but the entirety of how we think about global computing, AI, the digital cloud, and how business will get conducted and transacted in this world.
I hear you on that. I thank you. I want to make sure I get a question for Ms. Brown here in New York, just outside of my district. We have a lot of nuclear energy and more on the way, I will say, and I'm certainly supportive of that. Ms. Brown, sometimes we hear the word tariffs and it's considered a dirty word, but when targeted and strategic and tied to clear national interest, tariff can play an important role in protecting our American jobs. Can you speak to why maintaining a strong domestic steel industry matters, not only for our economic and national security, but for the workers and their families?
Real quick answer, no.
Thank you. You said it so clearly, I can't really add to what you have, but I'll just say that our union utilizes the trade laws more than any other union in North America, but certainly in the United States. For us, it's about maintaining strong domestic capacity and strong domestic manufacturing jobs. And as you said, they have to be strategic, focus on bad actors so that we can level the playing field for American workers and industry.
Thank you, President. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Strong.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that we've hit on a lot of good points this morning. I'm Congressman Dale Strong. I represent the 5th District of Alabama. And you talk about cost-effective power. You look at it, I want to let you know about Alabama. We're part of the Tennessee Valley Authority system. In many cases, we're 40% more cost-effective per megawatt. You look at it, we're able to do a lot of things there in North Alabama. This administration's policies are eliminating inferior steel. So let's just talk about what's going on here in America. We're back in the shipbuilding business, and we're also back in the submarine building business. National security is better because of each of you. Something not talked about enough is, I think, each of you and your employees for their involvement in our communities. President Trump, during his last State of the Union, recognized a steel worker and his family from Decatur, Alabama. Together, they had fostered more than 40 children. You think about it. He's an employee at Nucor Steel. Thank you for what they're doing. America is back, and it's because of the steel industry. Mr. Chair, I yield back.
I thank the gentleman. Mr. Vesey.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Napoleon, I want to thank you for being here. As you know, Texas has a really big stake with Nucor. And I know that y'all employ about 2,300 people from the Jewett bar mill to scrap and scrap recycling operations along the Gulf Coast. And obviously those jobs are very important to the entire state. And so I wanted to ask you specifically about your testimony. You talked about $20 billion in domestic investments since 2020, this electric arc furnace, which makes one of the most energy-intensive manufacturers in the country. And as we look to, as we look for this next level of advanced nuclear fusion, what does the American steel industry need from an energy policy standpoint to keep that investment and that job creation going?
So again, thank you for the question. And looking almost every state where we're at, we are the single largest consumer of electricity. So every day we're consuming about 50,000 megawatts. But when you think about the infrastructure required, you think about the grid hardening, again, that's parts where Nucor's investing. So we're not just investing in the pieces that are going to build that we're also investing in taking positions where in fusion technologies, in fission technologies to advance that ball. Not because we want to make electrons, that's never going to be our business model, but we need all of them to win. There are 4 small modular reactor technologies from Bill Gates' company with Terra Power, GE Hitachi, and 2 others. All 4 of those are up and running and commercialized in China today. We do not have our first one built in the U.S. We've got to move faster. Again, there are things that I think Congress and the Senate can do to advance that ball to keep us energy independent. But again, every utility CEO I sit down with, from Harry Sedaris at Duke to Joe Dominguez in Constellation and the Tennessee Valley Authority, we've got to move faster. We've got to make the investments quicker. And again, permitting is going to be a big part of that as we think about SMRs and advanced nuclear technologies to speed that up. Not to do it the wrong way, to take every safeguard and precaution. But I began my career in nuclear power. That's where I started. And the irony of Nucor Corporation started out as the Nuclear Corporation of America. So it's come full circle, and we are going to be incredibly strong advocates to to do that and to build nuclear power, both traditional AP1000 type reactors as well as the SMRs.
Real quick, in my last question, let me ask you this. Your fact sheet shows that you're paying your teammates about $115,000 a year over the last 3 years, and I think that's a very impressive number. I know that's tied to your profit model. I want to ask you, what's the actual relationship between trade enforcement and worker wages?
Yeah, that's a great question. Look, our pay for performance goes from my level at CEO all the way down to the entry level team member. So in the production environment, 2/3 of their pay is at risk based on safe quality tons that they produce. And so if, for example, they can't run because we're getting devastated by 28-30% imports coming into the country, or like we saw in the last administration where Mexico had bypassed their TRQs and went over by 1,500% rebar coming into this nation, it's a major hit. Now again, one of the best things about our company is we've not laid off a single team member because of lack of work in our history. So we've not lost team members, but their wages certainly get impacted where those imports go out of control. And again, part of the Level the Playing Field Act that we are incredibly strong supporters of and really believe we need to pass makes that a faster way to combat that and deal with that immediately.
Thank you, sir.
Sure thing. Mr. Sauer.
Mr. Taplin, great to see you. I'm the first ever former professional hockey player to serve in Congress. Are you a hockey fan? You know, I asked that question. The Stanley Cup champion, Carolina Hurricanes, had their patch on their shoulder, both home and away jerseys. Congratulations, well done. As most of you know in this room, Minnesota's 8th Congressional District is home to the Iron Range. On the Iron Range, we have a rich 146-plus year history of mining. The iron ore that won us 2 world wars, and today mines that taconite is used to produce upward of 80% of our nation's domestically produced steel. Simply put, America's steel industry begins in Minnesota's 8th Congressional District. The incredible impact that the downstream sector of the steel industry has in the districts that are represented by my colleagues in this room simply would not be possible without Minnesota's Iron Range. It's the union workers on Minnesota's Iron Range that makes this all possible. While the first Trump administration initial Section 232 tariffs on steel put in place in 2018 were kept in place by the Biden administration, I believe it is safe to say that over time these tariffs became somewhat less effective as carve-outs and exemptions were put in place, allowing China and other countries to further manipulate the global market. Mr. Young, it's great to see you here today. Upon re-entering office last year, President Trump increased the Section 232 tariff rate to 50% and did away with many of the exemptions. Now that this higher 50% tariff rate has been in place for about a year now, can you expand upon the impact this has had on U.S. steel business?
Thank you, Congressman. As I mentioned in the opening comments, trade enforcement is robust, and part of that are the changes that the President made in Section 232. You mentioned several of those. We have much more certainty. We have much more clarity. We have lower levels of imports. It allows greater confidence in making the investments that we're making. It allows us to restart facilities. And I think there are often calls for changes, and I think credit is also due to the administration. They have made refinements where necessary, and at times, as Mr. Bloom said, folks try to take advantage of the system, and there need to be modifications to address those types of game playing. But overall, I think that there's a lot more clarity, and that's helpful for everyone, both producers of steel and consumers of steel.
Thank you very much. Mr. Bloom, same question. It's great to see you again. How has the Trump administration's increase in the 232 tariffs from 25 to 50% impacted Cleveland Cliffs?
It's been a real positive for us, Congressman Sauber. Thank you for the question. You know, as I addressed in my testimony, the first thing that we did upon market conditions improving was bring back previously underutilized production lines, mostly in steel mills. That is creating incremental demand for iron ore. So I'm pleased to share, and I know you're aware of this, you know, we are bringing back workers on the range. We are restarting production lines, both at North Shore Mining and on a limited basis taconite. All told, we're bringing back about 65 jobs, and it's positive momentum. We thank you for standing by, those workers at Menorca and Hibtac who were impacted by the indefinite idlings of those facilities. But I think the tide is turning, and we believe that there's reason to be hopeful for more callbacks in the very near future.
Very well said. Thank you very much. I appreciate all of your professional testimony, and keep up the great work our nation is doing. Thank you.
Thank you, gentleman. Mr. Baird.
Is that on? Yeah. That was. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for being here, and thank all of you for your testimony. I got to go to Newport because the one you mentioned, Mr. Copeland, at Crawfordsville, Indiana, is in my district, and so it's been a welcome addition to the community. And Mr. Brown, you mentioned, that their employees or teammates or whatever are integrated into the community. So I'm going to share with you something that happened back when we first started in Crawfordsville, Indiana. You ended up hiring a lot of our young farm people, and I'm interested in agriculture, and so they were, it's difficult to start in farming. And yet, when Nucor came in and started hiring them, and at the salaries you're talking about, it really worked well, hand in hand. They could start farming as a young farm family, and yet they could get employment and income that they could count on so closely there to Montgomery, Putnam, and Clark County. So that was a welcome addition. So Nucor's been very well received in Crawfordsville, Indiana, and then, like I said, I'm very interested in agriculture, and we use a lot of big iron and big steel in agriculture, so it's good to see that kind of investment in our community, and it's a rural community, agricultural community. And then I want to tell you a story. This will tell you something about your people that you can use. When they started hiring, so I was working for Extension Service at that time, and when they started hiring so many of our local people, I got interested in it. So I thought, maybe I ought to do a test market. So I called the facility, and I said, started talking about, I had some, farm equipment and stuff, and I thought I could. And the gentleman was very nice to me. We started talking. Finally got around to asking me a question. He said, so just how much are you talking about? And I said, well, I think I can get a pickup though pretty quick. He never insulted me, but he said, sir, we usually deal in larger volumes. But anyway, you've been a very welcome addition to our community, to the farm community. So indirectly, I was trying to share that you've helped the agriculture industry by offering employment for some of the young people. So we want to thank you for that. And, I think the quality of steel is extremely important. I've heard the plant a couple of times. And the employees have been very happy. They stayed up. All of those that I remember being hired early on are still there and retiring. And you've created a situation where we need better roads there in Crawfordsville, Indiana. And your presence and income and taxes and so on have allowed that to happen. So I guess I'm just trying to tell you that I'm going to get it more than a pickup load one of these days. Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Khan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. President Brown, first let me just congratulate you on your historic election, and thank you for being here. Mr. Bloom, good to see you. I've appreciated our work together, and thank you to all of the witnesses. My passion from the steel industry, my passion for the steel industry comes from my upbringing. When I was growing up in Bucks County, I saw in Lower Bucks, Fearless Works shut down. That steel plant had created thousands of jobs for kids in my community, families in my community. And it always struck me how much that steel plant shutting down hurt Pennsylvania, hurt Bucks County, hurt the families that I grew up with. We have a situation now where we're producing about 82 million tons, but our total capacity is 115 million tons. That means 20% of our steel is still idle. 20% may just seem like a statistic, but that means that there are steel plants that could be putting people to work that are not. And we need to, as a country, figure out how we can get to at least 100% capacity here in U.S. Steel. Now, when I was in Cleveland, I saw at the warehouse steel coming in from China. I mean, I didn't understand it. We know Cleveland Cliffs is right there, and I saw from Shugang Steel, a Chinese company that has had forced labor and dumping that steel in warehouses in the Cleveland port. That should be unacceptable. There should be zero steel coming from China here. And there are things we can do to make sure we get to 100% capacity so that we don't have idle steel plants in places like Steelton or Granite City or Dearborn. First, we need to strengthen the Buy in America provisions. And I have done that on a bipartisan way in strengthening some of the loopholes to the Berry Amendment so that we actually are purchasing American steel for our military. It seems the most obvious thing. Second, I have a bipartisan bill, the Modern Steel Industrialization Act, that would say that we should be providing grants for upgrades to American steel factories and for support of the steel industry in deindustrialized towns. Third, I believe we need an industrial investment bank that will help buy American steel and invest in steel in the United States. And of course, I support the 232 and 301 tariffs against the dumping into the United States. And that's a place I've actually agreed with the administration on the tariffs on the steel industry because the Chinese and others have not played fair. The final thing I would just say is this country has made a dramatic mistake by letting industry be hollowed out. We should look from industry to industry and say, if you're making stuff that we're currently importing, we're going to support you as a government. And we should have metrics. At least this amount of percent in every critical industry should be made in the United States. And then work as a government and business and labor to hit those metrics so that we can rebuild the industrial capacity of this country. You all are really heroes, as I'm concerned, in terms of building our steel industry that built this country, and I really salute your work, and I hope on a bipartisan basis we can work together to get to 100% capacity utilization here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, and I recognize Mr. Gosar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and my fellow members of the Steel Caucus for hosting this important hearing. Affordable steel begins with strong domestic production, reliable American energy, and a secure supply of raw materials. We also need a heightened aspect of all the mining aspects. No, there's not very many American mining companies anymore. You got to enhance that. And I wore my socks to prove that. You know, so periodic change.
I'm just impressed you're wearing socks today.
Well, I am from the West Coast, so but these also mean good paying jobs for workers. And I'm proud to represent a district that's home of both Nucor Steel and Harasco and Environmental Services in Kingman, Arizona. If you haven't been there, Kingman is exploding. It is actually a great time to be part of it. My district leads Arizona in steel-related economic output, supporting nearly 1,000 American jobs, generating over $62 million in wages each year. My questions are here to be top one. Kingman is booming, as I just said. In 2022, Nucor invested $100 million to build a new melt shop that opened last year. Having visited, I got to tell you, it's unbelievable, unbelievable. The investment created more good-paying jobs in Kingman and increased America's ability to produce steel here and at home. How has Nucor partnered with the city of Kingman and local community to help meet America's growing needs and demand for domestically produced steel?
Well, thank you for the question. Thank you for the socks. And I agree with you. We're going to continue to invest. But when we took over Kingman, it didn't have its own melt shop. So we had to bring billets in from our Utah mill. And it was really an entrance for us. It was the first time we put a facility in Kingman or anywhere in Arizona. Over the last 4, 5, 6 years, we've recognized the great partnership we have with the city of Kingman and the workers there, the opportunity to serve our customers there, which ultimately meant I brought to our board of directors the opportunity to put the EAF there, spend $100 million to increase and give them basically their own sustainability, right, where they can produce, melt, ship and take care of their entire customer base in a very actively engaged and growing area of our country. And so that area is doing really well. That plant's doing amazing. That team there has brought that mill up very safely and producing incredibly well. So, you know, for us, what that investment means is that facility for the next 30, 40, 50 years is going to continue to not just pump out steel, it's going to continue to create livelihood and jobs for families that are able to take care of their kids and live the American dream and build homes and cars and send their kids to college and again, it's a great community that they all live and work in.
My last question is Buy American requirements and steel tariffs helped how they strengthen these investments and provide greater certainty for future expansion and job creation.
Well, you know, you've heard from many of our colleagues today in their opening statements and answers to the questions. 232 is working. You know, in about 2 weeks, I'm going to celebrate 30 years at Newport, and it's been an incredible journey. But I have never seen in my 30-year career import levels where they're at today. They are the lowest levels I've ever seen in my 30 years. So they were hovering around 14.5 or 15% of the entire ADC picture in the United States. That is a massive win for the U.S. because we can supply the steels that are needed to build and rebuild this nation, to continue to build the digital economies of tomorrow. And so that combined with 301, that combined with reshoring of shipbuilding and military complex, and I think we sit at a precipice for the greatest resurgence of the steel industry, again, in my entire career right now.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Yield back to you.
Chairman Yields, thank you. Representative Beth Van Dyne from Texas checked in this morning, was not able to attend the hearing. So the reason I bring this up is because she is the lead on Level Playing Field 2.0. And so she has a statement here that I'm going to enter into the record without objection. So ordered. But just one question that I'm going to direct to Mr. Westbrooks. In your capacity as COO of Metallus, can you tell us about how practices like cross-border subsidies and dumping from China and others negatively impact your business?
Absolutely, yeah. Unfortunately, we've seen this far too many times. The imports coming in through other countries unintended. The tariffs are definitely helping. We need to sustain that as we move forward. Bills like Level the Playing Field 2.0 get after that, and that's what we need to see to help our business, to help all of our businesses, and give us a path forward where we can make the future investments consistently.
Thank you. You anticipated my follow-up was Leveling Playing Field 2.0 and what impact that would have. I would open that up to any of you that want to weigh in on Leveling the Playing Field 2.0, because that's an important piece of legislation. And I'll start with you, Mr. Tepelian.
Yeah, look, again, we've talked a lot about, we as an industry have won, 10 years ago, we had about 50 trade cases that the industry had won against illegal dumping, subsidized steels coming in the shores of the U.S. Today, it's roughly 150. So both administrations in the White House have been very supportive of that. The problem is what we saw several years ago when, again, Mexico is surging imports at 1,500% beyond what was agreed upon in USMCA, or slabs coming in from Canada at 4,000% beyond. There's got to be remediation. It can't take a year or 2 or 3 for the industry to respond and penalize the bad actors for coming in. So like we mentioned before, not only Level the Playing Field Act, but as you all get ready to engage with USMCA in creating a new partnership, they've got to bring border control in. They've got to have programs inside their countries that stop the massive dumping of non-market economies like China of putting their steel in, because it's going to find one home right here in the United States. This is the best and strongest economy in the world. They're going to do everything they can to circumvent everywhere to find that home here. And so again, I think a big piece of that should be making sure that they bring in restrictions for those non-market economies coming into Mexico and Canada.
Ms. Brown.
Thanks so much for the question, and I'll keep it quick, I know there are other comments. I think Mr. Connor really laid out a lot of the key pieces for a very strong and robust domestic industry, and leveling is just common sense, and it's something that our union has been fighting for a very long time, and we look forward to the day when it's actual policy.
Thank you. Mr. Bloom.
Thank you, Chairman. I would just say that, we've all addressed the importance of Section 232 measures. Maybe we've done a disservice in doing so to the ADCBD laws. which tend to be our first line of defense against dumped and subsidized imports. And for that reason, it's really important that we keep our AD/CVD laws up to date. We know China moves fast. We've seen that in their electric vehicle industry. And they've moved fast in terms of pursuing new unfair trade practices that our trade laws currently aren't well suited to address. So that's fundamentally what Leveling the Playing Field Act 2.0 is about. And that's why it's important that we get that legislation passed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Young.
I'll echo what everyone else has said. We need to make sure that we have the trade enforcement tools necessary to meet the challenge that we're facing. And Leveling the Playing Field Act 2.0 will help do that and encourage its passage.
Thank you. Mr. Westbrooks, you want anything further?
Nothing further to add. Thank you.
Mr. Holder?
Yeah, it's absolutely needed. The job is not done. For instance, on the stainless tube and pipe side, 80% of the industry is supplied by imports today. So work is not done. I appreciate your efforts.
You bet. I'm going to throw something out just anecdotally before I recognize Mr. Mervan. And I got a call from a manufacturer in my district, a trailer manufacturer. And what they're up against is one of the creative ways that China has used to circumvent direct dumping is to go to manufactured goods in countries like Mexico. So now they'll build a factory in just a hot second because they don't have the regulatory restraints that would prevent them from doing that here. They're able to pop up a state-of-the-art facility in a country like Mexico, and instead of putting goods or raw goods into the U.S. supply chain, they're putting finished goods in the form of things like trailers at a 25+% discount to the market. And that's where we're seeing, the understanding that they have of how to circumvent our policies without us being able to directly address that. So I just want to put that, I'm seeing a lot of heads nodding, so I'm sure this is on your radar screen and you share the same concerns. But this hits home across our manufacturing base when we see that type of really egregious violations. And so when we have trade talks with countries like Mexico, I think that's got to be addressed and how that's impacting our manufacturing base. And so with that, I think we had a couple of members that were on their way, but I'm not going to hold you any further. I'm going to recognize Mr. Van for any final thoughts he might have.
Well, the final thoughts that I have is I, of course, want to thank all of you for what you represent as far as national security and your ability to be able to be solid employers within your regions and also the national security. That was my best fill I had. Yeah, rip off the song, but I chose.
No, you got here just under the wire, so we'll recognize you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our witnesses for being here today. For communities across OH11, steel has historically meant good-paying union jobs, domestic manufacturing capacity, and the ability to build the car's infrastructure, energy systems, defense materials, and supply chains our country depends on. Ohio's 11th Congressional District knows what happens when trade policy fails workers and communities. We have seen the consequences of unfair imports, deindustrialization, plant closures, and hollowed out supply chains. But we also know what it looks like when policy supports domestic production. Cleveland Cliffs Cleveland Works is a direct example in my district of why these issues matter, not just for a company's balance sheet, but for workers, families, and broader manufacturing ecosystems in Northeast Ohio. I believe our trade policy should be clear. We should not allow China or any other bad actor to dump subsidized deals into our market, exploit loopholes, or use third-party countries to undercut American workers and production. Strong trade enforcement must also translate into strong labor standards, continued investment in domestic facilities, and real benefits for workers who make American steel. That is why I want to focus on the connection between trade enforcement, workers, and communities like Cleveland. Mr. Bloom, Cleveland Cliffs is bringing back previously underutilized production lines. Can you speak specifically to what that means for Cleveland Works, the workers there, and the broader Northeast Ohio manufacturing economy.
Certainly. Thank you, Congresswoman, for your statement and for your question. It was so well stated you could join us as one of the industry witnesses. Yeah, we are adding production and jobs at Cleveland Works. As I addressed in my testimony, we're bringing back what was a previously underutilized steel shop on the west side of the plant. We're hiring workers, and we're investing upwards of $40 million to do that. The reason we're doing that is because demand is up and imports are down, as your testimony touched on. So that's a very real world, tangible example of what happens when this country appropriately disciplines imports. There's a direct benefit to mills like Cleveland Works and communities like your home community of Cleveland, Ohio.
Thank you. And Mr. Bloom, how do strong Section 232 protections, Buy America requirements, and stronger enforcement against circumvention help support not just steel production, but also long-term investment in union facilities and workers?
It's critical. We're in a very capital-intensive business. All of the companies represented here, and the union recognizes this as well, have to invest significant sums of capital on a year in, year out basis just to sustain our enterprises, just to sustain our businesses. So, having market conditions that lend to that is critical to the, to generating the confidence that we need to sink hundreds of millions of dollars into our operations on a year in, year out basis.
Thank you. Ultimately, tariffs and trade enforcement cannot be the end goal. They must be tools to rebuild domestic industry, protect workers, and strengthen communities like Cleveland. As Congress looks forward to USMCA modernization and other trade tools, we must push back against bad actors who use cheap labor to offshore production. We must support America's workers by strengthening our trade remedy laws and closing the loopholes that allow Chinese overcapacity, transshipment, and steel-intensive goods from third countries to undercut North American workers. And with that, I yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. I don't know if you were breathless because you were in such a hurry to get here, or if you were just in complete awe of our steel industry. Mr. Mervan, final thoughts.
Final thoughts are, again, thank you very much for the hundreds of thousands of jobs and the economic development that you represent in the health plans, but most importantly, our national security. It is very vital that our steel industry thrives. It is extremely important, as we talked about, Section 232, USMCA, melted and poured in the United States, level the playing field. These are things that allow the steel industry to continue to thrive. I want to thank Roxanne Brown for her leadership, for her historic election, and to all of you during this time of renegotiations, the contracts for the steel workers. As major employers in my community, please take and understand the value of dignity of work and what it means to my steel workers as we look for a fair compromise to make sure our steel workers and our steel industry continues. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vice Chairman Mervan. This has been a great event here this year. We appreciate it, and I join Ms. Brown, and I'm also in awe, not quite breathless, but in awe of what you do for American national security, and it just it's such a great opportunity for me to be able to advocate on behalf of such an important industry. Thank you so much, and we appreciate you being here, and this State of the Steel meeting is adjourned.